The Fire Emblem series was one I've always been meaning to get into since I was like a teenager, since I did think the games were kind of fun. I did end up playing the GBA games, but I ended up stopping for one reason or another. But when I did see that 3 Houses released, I was at least kind of interested considering the fact that they marketed 3 different routes. And while I do know there is a 4th one, I was still interested to see how the different routes will play out. Along with that, I did also see how the class system worked, where it's really open after seeing a friend play it, so that also piqued my interest. But with that, I actually think it's a good time to get into the video, starting with my first like, that being the replayability the game has, which I thought was really nice here. Not only do you have, 4 different routes and unique maps to go with them, you also have plenty of different units to play with on every single playthrough. You have at least 25 different ones from each route, and you can go with whatever class you want, as I mentioned. There's also at least 19 different classes, accounting for gendered ones and character-only classes, but still there's plenty of options here, which I think helps make each playthrough pretty unique. There's also that each class has upsides and downsides, so you can also play to the character's strength or just go wild. This is of course without the expansion pass, so keep that in mind, but in general the base game does have enough to make me want to play the game. And going back to the classes for a second, there's actually a nice amount of customization with the characters, which I also like. There's no limitations to what you can do other than what I mentioned before, but even with that there's still a decent amount of options, again from what I said. Since there isn't really anything stopping you, say if you want to get ability from a certain class like Miracle from the Bishop class to maybe help your tank last another hit or two, you can go ahead and do that. And then maybe say if you want to raise your luck stat to help make that skill activate a lot more often, swap to a class that gives you better stat growth rates. Of course there's more stuff in the game like that, but I just wanted to use that as an example. Then we have the characters themselves, which I ended up liking at least quite a bit of them. I mostly got a lot out of seeing their support conversations, considering they don't really get much in the main story, but at least they're enjoyable to see there. The Lords and Rhea are a bit different since they have a lot more interesting moments and actually do develop, but again, they were also cool. But some characters I ended up really liking definitely have to be Dedue, Hilda, Ignat, Raphael, and Claude, to name a few. Then we have the gameplay here, which is another part I really ended up liking. The only other tactics game that I play a whole bunch with the games in the Sky series, and even if it's not 100% like that, I still really enjoy it here. The different map gimmicks you have to deal with I thought was really cool, like how say trees can increase your invasion. And then we have other map gimmicks like fog and whatever else to keep you on your toes. Of course there'll be like more unique ones on certain maps, like story maps and whatever, but there's still a lot of stuff here that I really liked. Then there's how each class acts in battle, like for example Pegasus Knights and similar classes are really good at movement, but they suck against bows. There's also different attack ranges for each weapon and say mages, so again you have to consider where you are on the map. Overall, again, there's some depth here and it's still pretty fun. And I also really like the OST, and I thought it brought out the scenes it was used in and just really nice to listen to. Some of my favorites definitely have to be Recollection and Regret, A Guide for the Future, Spiderweb, Chasing Daybreak, Foldland Winds, and God's Shattered Star. And if I'm being honest, the last one might be my favorite final boss theme of all time, if not my top 3, and I was really shocked when I heard it for the first time. The time I spent with 3 Houses I really enjoyed, and to me this is just another good strategy game. But in the end, no game is perfect, even for a game as solid as this, so let's just jump straight into the dislikes, and one of which is just how the characters don't really develop throughout the main story. Again, I mentioned before the lords and whatnot do kind of have more development, but the members of the houses and quite a bit of the Church of Sailors don't really get much or anything in the story. They do talk throughout different scenes and whatnot, mostly about the situation at hand and their thoughts on it, or just other random stuff. I do kind of understand why, since they're all 4 different routes and you can recruit a lot of different characters. It's just I kind of wish the main house characters and whatever route you picked would get some development. And the support conversations are optional, so it's not like you have to see any extra character moments, which does kind of suck. Then there are also the paralog message, which does add more to the character, but like the support conversations, they are optional. And while doing both does give you benefits, I do at least wish there was a way to fit the characters into the main story more often and have some development. I also don't like how repetitive the first half of the game is with all the routes, and from when I played it kinda got annoying. What I mean by this is that all the routes are pretty much the same missions, and while I do understand why they're in the same area, I just think it gets boring really fast seeing the same missions for 3 different times. And while you do get a few different cutscenes with the different characters on the routes and learn more about the different lords, it's again just what I mentioned before where it got really annoying really fast. And it even sucks how even in a time skip there are some missions that are shared between 3 different routes, and while it's not as bad as the first half, again it's kind of annoying to me. But in the end, I still really enjoyed this game regardless of the faults. Other than some minor stuff like the pacing, which I thought was kind of slow at the first half, but got better after chapter 6, even if it was, slow up until then. But even then, there's a lot more positives to the game, as I mentioned, and I really do want to hear what you guys ended up liking and disliking about this entry. Let me know in the comments below. Of course, before the video ends, I'll go over my own likes and dislikes. Likes, the game is pretty replayable, there's a great amount of customization for the classes, the characters themselves I thought were pretty nice, the gameplay is pretty good, and the OC is pretty amazing. Dislikes, the other characters don't really get development, but as I mentioned, the lords do, but a majority of them don't, and the game is kind of repetitive. Thank you all for watching, and see you guys later.